Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles. I hope that you all are having a great and wonderful day and morning. It is Motivation Monday, and I am back again to encourage you. And we're going to be looking at the book today, Pathfinders, as we continue to close up and wrap up this particular book. We're going to be looking today at Oscar Micheaux. And hopefully, if we have some time, we will get to Paul R. Williams. But if we don't, we will be back on next Monday, and I will share him with you all. So today is not going to be very long. We're going to take a look at Oscar Micheaux, and then we're going to let you go. So let me show you a picture of him. Filmmaker Oscar Micheaux. And again, this is Monday Motivation. We are here to hopefully motivate you to get rolling in whatever God has called you to do. And part of that motivation has to do with looking at different people in life who have succeeded against odds, who have blazed paths and trails. So again, today we're looking at filmmaker Oscar Micheaux. Good morning, Bespoke. Good morning, Prophet Jonathan. And good morning to those of you all who are watching by all different kinds of methods. Some of you are watching by phone. Some of you are watching in the app. Some of you are watching through Twitter. Some of you are watching on your laptops at work. All of it's all good. And we are going to jump into our lesson for today. Oscar Micheaux. Good morning. Oscar Micheaux, foundry man, coal miner, steel worker, shoe shine boy, and Pullman porter. By the time he was 21, he had been all of those things. So, a lot of times, good morning, rich girl, a lot of times people get stuck, right, into a field or into one particular career, and they think that that's all that there is or that's all there is to them. But Oscar Micheaux is a good example of somebody who was able to finally kind of find his niche, all right? So by the time he was 21, think about that. He had already been a foundryman, a coal miner, a steel worker, a shoe shine boy, and a Pullman porter, all by the age of 21, right? Some people would say just one of those careers is enough for a lifetime. All right. Ever restless, in the spring of 1905, he decided to try his hand at something new once again. 5 years had passed since 16-year-old, 6-foot-tall Oscar Micheaux left Metropolis, Illinois, later to become the earthly home of the comic book character Superman. Young Micheaux was bored out of his gourd in his humdrum hometown. About the only thing that thrilled him was selling produce from his family's farm on the town's open-air market. Possessed with the gift of gab, he was a natural-born salesman. And for those of you just come in, and I'll show you who he is again. That's Oscar Micheaux. All right. When Micheaux left Metropolis, Illinois, he headed north for Chicago. Now, in 1905, he headed west to South Dakota, intent on being a homesteader. I'm here to make good or die trying, he told a man over dinner shortly after he bought his first 160 acres in Gregory County. This black homesteader in overwhelmingly white South Dakota worked hard building a sod house, raising outbuildings, breaking up the earth, sowing and reaping, and getting his corn, flax, and other grain to market. He did not, however, make good. By the summer of 1912, his dream was a bust. First came blizzards, and then came drought. Crop failure wasn't the only thing that had Micheaux down in the dumps. Earlier, he had ended a budding romance with a Scottish woman, certain that if they kept on, if they married, life would be more difficult than it already was. He wound up marrying a black woman he had met in Chicago, Orlean McCracken, only she turned out to be a viper. So there he was in the summer of 1912, not only broke, but also broken-hearted. Books were a big comfort. As this voracious reader lost himself in Jack London's Martin Eden, James Weldon Johnson's autobiography of an ex-colored man, and other stories, an idea took root. Eureka. It was as if he had struck gold. During the fall of 1912, Oscar Micheaux wrote at a fever pitch, knocking out about 200 pages at Christmas. He turned his life into a novel. Homesteading, forbidden love, awful wife, and all. He hired one associate to edit his manuscript and another to type it up. He mailed the novel off to publishers, and then he waited. When the rejections piled up, Micheaux didn't throw a pity party. Instead, he buckled up and decided to self-publish. Team self-publish. And he was not about to let the fact that he was broke stand in his way. He suited up and blazed around South Dakota drumming up subscribers. In a matter of weeks, he had pre-sold 1,500 copies of his book at $1.50 a pop. The Conquest, the story of a Negro pioneer, was published on May 1st, 1913. Through mail order and door-to-door sales, and with sales agents doing the same, Micheaux sold the heck out of The Conquest, north, east, south, and west. His days as a Pullman porter definitely came in handy. While working as a servant in luxury railroad cars, he had been to scores of cities, east and west of the Mississippi. Oscar Micheaux knew his way around. While on the road selling The Conquest, this self-starter was fast at work on his next novel, The Forged Note, a romance of the darker races, in which he also self-published. If that were not enough, while promoting The Forged Note, he wrote on a revised edition of The Conquest and retitled it The Homesteader. As Micheaux watched The Homesteader outsell The Conquest, Eureka again. He decided to turn his novel into a picture show, or photo play as movies were called. In under a year, Micheaux, long a lover of plays and movies, scripted his film, assembled a camera crew and a cast, scouted locations, directed the film, and publicized it. He had also wrangled friends and strangers into investing in his film, people as different as the German auctioneer in Sioux City and a black veterinarian working in a meatpacking plant in South Sioux City. So this guy here is like the first crowdfunder, the first Kickstarter, the first GoFundMe person, right? All in his day, he was doing this by word of mouth, by traveling place to place on foot. All right. So there was also the issue of distribution, getting the film to screens. In those Jim Crow days, that usually meant black-only theaters and other black-only venues, some owned by blacks and some not. When Micheaux got through wearing all those hats, he made history. He was not the first black filmmaker, but he was the first to produce a full-length movie, a super production versus a short film with a running time of 40 minutes or less. Micheaux's history-making film premiered at an armory in Chicago on February 20th, 1919. Like other movies at the time, The Homesteader, which was about 3 hours long, was a silent film. Now, think about the attention span of people today and who you're going to get in a silent film with no words these days for 3 hours. That's a miracle in and of itself. The super production, The Homesteader, by Oscar Micheaux, Negro author and producer, which opened at a Temple Theater for a week's engagement last Sunday, has been meeting with great public appreciation. So said the New Orleans Item in June 1919. Later that summer, the Washington Bee, a black-owned weekly in the nation's capital, called The Homesteader one of the most remarkable photoplays that's ever been exhibited in the city. Micheaux was not a one-hit wonder. Remember, we talked about that on Friday, that you do not have to be a one-trick pony, right? Fast and Furious from Chicago, New York, and elsewhere, he produced sometimes 2 or 3 films a year, giving people thrills and chills, making them laugh and cry. He also made them think about race relations, the value of education, crime and punishment, the price of vice, the virtue of being true to oneself, and more. Other of his movies, The Dungeon, A Son of Satan, and The Spider's Web, are some of Michaud's early films. There was also Body and Soul, about twin brothers, one saintly and one sinister, in which the already famous stage actor and singer Paul Robeson made his screen debut. Several years later, Michaud returned to his favorite subject himself with the first full-length talkie by a filmmaker, The Exile, the story of a homesteader in South Dakota. Not every review was a rave, not every flick was a hit. Still, many people applauded him for producing entertainment that did not limit black characters to buffoons and brutes, nitwits and ninnies, as Hollywood typically did and still does. Michaud's films reflected the diversity within his community. He peopled his films with gangsters, gold miners, doctors, lawyers, teachers, detectives, and millionaires. As he stated in a press release, I've always tried to make my photoplays present the truth, to lay before the race a cross-section of his own life, to view the colored heart from close range. In his truth-telling, Oscar Micheaux used film methods that were idiosyncratic and modern-minded as anything being tried in Hollywood at the time. He observed biographer Patrick McGilligan. These techniques included multiple points of view, flashbacks, intercutting, and cross-cutting. To be sure, Michaud's films were not as polished as those Hollywood produced, but unlike Hollywood directors, Michaud did not have budgets of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and up. The man from Metropolis made his films with about $15,000 on average. It takes a kind of genius to do that, a Superman of sorts. So here is one of his. So before Tyler Perry, folks, I know everybody thinks he's like the in person, but before Tyler Perry, there was Mr. Michaud. And if you notice, his subtext there on his flyer for his movie is a cast of colored stars. So don't let anybody fool you about your history. People have been doing this for a while. They haven't been getting the credit that they deserve. Again, Oscar Micheaux in all colored cast. Movie Underworld. So, again, don't let anybody fool you. Be encouraged today to know. Think about it. The guy went through 5 or 6 careers before he, as Apostle Vanessa Brooks taught on last night, he went through those careers before he got into his Kairos moment, right? And then he took his opportunity and he ran with his opportunity. He recognized, hey, I'm good at writing, and not only am I good at writing, I'm good at filmmaking, and I'm going to run with this opportunity. And he made history because he got in his Kairos moment and he stayed there and he wrote it out. All right. Our second person for today I want to encourage you with is architect Paul R. Williams. At one point in my life, I believed that I was going to be an architect, and I had believed it from like 9 years old up until I got into college in my second semester of my sophomore year, I believe it was. And then I realized I'm not called to be an architect. I love architecture. I'm married to an architect, but I recognized that I was more of a people person and I want to be around people, so I went into the field of art education instead. Still an artist though. So this is history we're talking. Paul R. Williams lived from 1894 to 1980. Question: who ever heard of a Negro being an architect? Scoffed a teacher at Polytechnic High in Los Angeles, California. The man stared at Paul with as much astonishment as he would have displayed had I proposed a rocket flight to Mars. If the teen or anyone else had named black architects they had heard of, MIT graduate Robert R. Taylor, for example, the teacher might have laughed in their faces. You have ability, the teacher told Paul, and then advised him to use it in another pursuit. The man believed that to make it as an architect, one needed white clients. That wouldn't and couldn't happen to Paul, he was sure. Don't butt your head futilely against the stone wall of race prejudice. And anybody who has looked at the field of architecture, I know when I was pursuing it, they often would say that architecture was the old white man's profession. And then turn around and you go into teaching and they would say teaching is the white woman's profession. So really, you can't go by what people say about a particular profession. If that's what you're interested in, I say put your whole heart into it and go for it, and make sure that that is your passion. Make sure that is your calling. Because I don't care what you go into these days, there's going to be some kind of pushback, or there's going to be some kind of obstacle that you might have to get over. So you can't just go by that. So it hurt to have his dream trashed by his teacher. Paul, who had loved to draw since he was a little boy, had been dreaming of being an architect for years. Don't butt your head against the stone wall of race prejudice, he was told. He thought long and hard about his teacher's advice. In the end, he reasoned that if he let the fact that he was black checkmate my will to do now, I will inevitably form the habit of being defeated. He decided to be hard-headed. After graduating from Polytechnic High in 1912, Paul began teaching himself everything he could about architecture, and in 3 years, he became a certified building contractor. He also took advantage of the LA Architectural Club. As a member, he could attend classes and enter competitions sponsored by the Society of Beaux Arts Architects, another club. Added to that, he began to study at the University of Southern California for 3 years, leaving before he could graduate because he needed to work. While he worked, he did a lot of what he called art school hopping, taking courses nights and weekends at several art schools, where different teachers taught different techniques. In his skill-building mission, Williams entered several competitions and winning some. One challenge he and 23 other contenders accepted was to design a one-story house that could be built for no more than $5,000 using tiles, which is a type of brick. The judges praised him for avoiding useless ornaments or expensive fads and awarded him the first place prize of $300. While studying architecture and entering competitions, Paul also worked at several white-owned architectural firms that specialized in different things. One specialized in landscape architecture, another in luxury homes, another in commercial buildings, and it all began to add up. Having become a student in physics and architectural engineering, having become a master with slide rules, compasses, angles, and other tools, 9 years after he graduated from high school, he became a licensed architect. Now, it's a lot harder these days to become a licensed architect because there are all of these hours that you have to certify that you've worked in certain areas of architecture, and then you have to take tests on each section in order to finally become a licensed architect. In 1922, he took what he called the great step, and he began a practice of his own. When Paul R. Williams and Associates opened in LA's Stock Exchange building, it was a one-man band. His early commissions included a home, a black contractor's home, and in collaboration with the white architect Norman Marsh, the Second Baptist Church, a historically black church. Understanding that to succeed in life, one must stoop to conquer, Williams often took on small projects that larger firms turned down, and so does my hubby. Along the way, Williams had his share of disappointments. Some potential commissions became dust in the wind, been there, lived it. And when a white person, perhaps having seen some of his work, came to his office and only discovered he was black, they would patronize someone else. I could see many of them freeze, he told readers. In the same article, Williams shared one of the secrets of his success. No matter the size of a job, he gave it his all. I labored over the plans for a $15,000 residence just as diligently as I do today over the plans for a huge mansion. Mansion? Yes. Williams had quite a few high-profile projects under his belt by then. One of his first commissions for a mansion was for Cord Haven, E.L. Cord's 32,000 square foot home on an 18-acre estate in Beverly Hills. This white industrialist telephoned Williams out of the blue and asked, and more like demanded, that Williams meet with him straightway at the building site. Williams obliged, sizing Cord up as a man who worshipped prompt action. At the end of the meeting, Cord asked Williams when he could deliver preliminary drawings. By 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Williams replied. That's impossible. Every other architect has asked for 2 to 3 weeks. My husband works like this. If he is inspired, well, he's anointed at what he does anyway, but he can do this. Like, draw up a plan and it be excellent in 24 hours. Now, I wouldn't go around asking him to do that all the time, but I've seen him do it. Even doing projects that are not just a home, but an entire community. So the man is gifted. He says, taking the measure of this man, he said, go ahead. Williams met the deadline and clinched the deal, never telling Cord that he had worked for 22 hours without sleeping or eating. And sometimes that's how it gets, especially when you're an artist. Sometimes you're up in the middle of the night. Sometimes you're up late at night. Sometimes you can't finish a piece and you can't take a break. I'll just put it that way. That sometimes when your creativity is flowing, it's like you have to get it out. You have to you have to finish that piece, and you can't do anything else. Like it's a drive that you have to finish, and if you don't finish, it's like you're stuck. So I can understand him working nonstop without eating, without drinking, to get it out and make sure it's done. All right. There are some people, they're not like that. They can't function like that. But I would just tell the creatives, and we taught on this a while back, marry a creative. Yes, he is a Kairos architect. Marry a creative. If you don't, you're going to drive your spouse cray. All right. Just a little side nugget there. Cord's $2 million showplace, completed during the Great Depression in 1933, really put Paul R. Williams on the map. He designed many more luxury homes in Beverly Hills, as well as in Bel Air and other posh places in California, for a galaxy of white movie stars. So here is the home that was designed and built. But it was designed in 22 hours. And that's where it stands today. All right. Let me finish up here. So he began to design for a galaxy of white movie stars, so many that he became known as the architect to the stars. The luminaries that he designed for included Lon Chaney, Barbara Stanwyck, Frank Sinatra, and Lucille Ball. Tap dancer Bill Bojangles Robinson was among his black celebrity clients. Williams also worked on commercial buildings. The more than 20 he designed or co-designed in LA alone include the Beverly Hills Hotel, Los Angeles County Courthouse, Saks Fifth Avenue, the 28th Street YMCA, and the theme building at Los Angeles International Airport. So Lax's theme building opened in 1962, the same year that St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital opened in Memphis, Tennessee. Williams donated his design for St. Jude's, founded by his friend Danny Thomas, a Lebanese-American actor. St. Jude's, which pledged to not discriminate against any child because of race, became a leading research and treatment hospital for children with cancer and other serious diseases. It was also in 1962 that Williams donated the design for the first African Methodist Episcopal Church new sanctuary on 25th and LaSalle Streets. People don't realize that architects do donate. Yes, they do. Oh my gosh, they donate, and sometimes it can make their wives a little concerned. But he donated several designs. My husband has donated designs in the past. By then, Paul R. Williams and Associates, located on Wilshire Boulevard, employed about 24 people. And that's a pretty medium-sized firm, all right? When Williams retired in the 1970s, he had worked on more than 3,000 projects in the States and abroad. If that teacher from the Polytechnic High was still alive, he must have been awestruck by how his students' hard-headedness had paid off. And this is him in his older life, standing in front of one of his designs. That's Paul R. Williams. He is standing in front of LAX's theme building. So if you've gone through the LAX airport, that is one of his designs. All right. This has been our Daring Dialogue for today. I hope that you got something out of this. I hope that if you are a designer, if you're a creator, if you're an artist, you're a writer, you're a filmmaker, you're a clothing designer, understand that there is no limit to the creativity that God wants to release in people that not only believe in Him, but also believe in themselves as capable of doing it. All right? So my encouragement to you is to not let things slow you down. We saw just with those two gentlemen, they had different things that could have slowed them down. For Paul Williams, it was a negative voice in his ear saying, I don't believe you're going to be able to do it in this day and age, in this climate, with these circumstances, right? We now have, unfortunately, we now have similar circumstances where racial prejudice and ugliness is trying to rear its head again. But you've got a new generation of people, I believe, who will not be stopped. They're not going to be stopped by the racial prejudice. They're not going to be stopped by people telling them what they can and cannot do. They're just going to go and do it. With the gentleman, Oscar Micheaux, he had the obstacle of just trying to figure out what he was good at, right? He tried several different careers before he finally got into his moment, got into his opportunity, got into his drive to write, and he began to sink his teeth into that. And so I would encourage you that whatever you find yourself doing and you know that you are good at it, don't just do it one time. Keep on doing it. Keep on writing. I didn't stop with my first book. I'm actually I'm into my 4th book on that series, but I've written 2 other books that are ebooks as well. So once you find your passion and once you find your drive, don't stop. Keep going. Keep pushing. Keep thinking about other ways that you can take that passion and utilize it, right? Because Oscar, he didn't just stop with his writing. He could have stopped there and he would have been successful, but he began to take those writings and he turned them into screenplays, and then he became a movie producer and a director, and then he became someone who could, raise funds for his own films, right? He didn't sit around and wait for somebody to hopefully invest in him. So that's another thing. Invest in yourself. One of the number 1 characteristics of successful people in life is the fact that they are willing to invest in themselves. They're not just waiting around for other people to hand them something. They are willing to get out there, put in the work, do the work. Just like both of these gentlemen, take the time to learn their craft. That's a part of investing in yourself. Take a class, like with the gentleman here. Even if you can't take a full, year's worth of work, think about how you can take a single class. If that's all you can start off with, or if that's all you can afford right now, but don't get stuck. So I hope that you are motivated today to not get stuck. And if you are stuck, to get unstuck and get moving. All right. So this has been our Daring Dialogues for today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I pray that you're having a great and wonderful day, that you're getting things done, that you stay passionate, that you don't allow anybody to move you from your place of passion, and that you continue on in the work. Get in your Kairos moment. I was really blessed listening early this morning to Apostle Vanessa Brooks's replay. If you want to go back and look at that replay on her page, it was a blessing. Let me tell you. I was like, man, it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm around here twirling. Because it goes so much into what God wanted me to share today. So I encourage you, get in your Kairos moment. And one thing she said that really stuck out to me today that I'm adding to my own affirmations for my life is, Father, my opportunities are going to marry my purpose. I'm not going to be stuck in a place where I have purpose and I have no opportunity. The devil is a lie. So I encourage you to get on it, look for those opportunities, and let those opportunities begin to marry your purpose. That's what we saw in Oscar and in Paul. Their opportunities began to marry their purpose, and they made history. All right. So you all take care today. Have a great and wonderful day. And see you on tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. God bless.